Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today I'm coming at you with another top 12 recs video. I know y'all love to hear my top 12 book recommendations in all these various different subcategories and specific tropes that are featured in horror and thriller books. So today we are covering mostly thrillers. I think I have maybe one horror book in here, but mostly we're on the thriller train because we are talking about the missing person trope. I love a missing person. It's the mystery of it all. It's not a straightforward murder. It's not cut and dry. There's so much more mystery about it. And because there's still a life possibly hanging in the balance, I think it makes the thrills that much more exciting and that much more fast paced. So some of these are my favorite thrillers that I've ever read, and I cannot wait to share them with you. But before we get into the book recommendations, I do want to talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Dossier. And y'all know I have been obsessed with Dossier for so long. Their entire mission is creating iconic fragrances that are recognizable and just as high quality as their luxury counterparts, but for a fraction of the price. That's right, there's no markup whatsoever on these perfumes, even though they're the same designer quality of what you would find in Sephora. So the one that I have to show you guys today is one of my favorites. This is Dossier's Ambery Cherry. It smells so good and it smells identical, like exactly like Tom Ford's Lost Cherry. This one is a favorite of mine for the winter season coming up. Oh my god, I'm literally going to be wearing it all the time. You smell exactly like Tom Ford, but you paid a fraction of the price. And when I say a fraction, I mean like some of their perfumes are down to like $29. You could get 5 Dossier perfumes for the price of one luxury fragrance, and it's the same quality, lasts the same amount of time on my skin. And Dossier also has a new collection called Dossier Originals, and I love that this is a genderless collection. They are all like neutral scents that anyone can wear, which I love that. They're some of my favorite scents from Dossier, actually. If you haven't checked them out, you totally should. This one is my favorite, the caramelized lavender and hazelnut. It just smells like warm, spicy, musky, like some pretty girl just like blew in from a winter storm into a coffee shop, and she's like warm, and it's the smell of her as she takes off her jacket and her beanie and like settles in. I know that's a very specific image, but that is what the scent reminds me of, and it is so good. I get so many compliments on the Dossier Originals specifically. Every time I wear them, people are like, that is so unique. What is that? And if you want to try out Dossier and save a little bit of money while you do, I will put my code and my link right down below so you guys can save some money while you're shopping at Dossier. Go ahead and check them out. Thank you so much to Dossier for sponsoring this video. And now let's go ahead and get into the book recs. I'm gonna start out with the one like true horror rec on this list just to kind of get it out of the way. So if you're a horror girl, listen up. And if you're a thriller girl, maybe this could be a horror book that would work for you. That is The Devil Crept In by Anya Ahlborn. I love Anya Ahlborn's writing style, and this book is all about missing boys. So we are following this little boy, and he's kind of an outcast. He's kind of like a loser. He's such a sympathetic and sweet main character to follow, and little boys around him, like his friends, his cousins, little boys that he's heard lore about from the past, have gone missing, and no one in the town really can figure out what is happening to them. But our sweet little guy is going to start investigating, and he finds himself stumbling into a place that he's definitely not equipped for. He just cannot stand the way that this town is avoiding this massive issue, and once he starts to have personal connections to the disappearances, he cannot deny it anymore, and he goes about trying to find out what happened to the people that he loves. It is gripping from the first page. It is so atmospheric. It's very small town murder mystery vibe, but with a horror twist. It still has that signature creeping horror that Anya Alborn is really good at. It's a little bit more slower paced, a little bit more character driven than the rest of the like more traditional thrillers on this list, but I really think it's worth it because the writing style is just gorgeous. It has that like nostalgic feeling of something like Stranger Things or like It, but obviously this is not as verbose as It. It has a really similar vibe though, and I loved the direction that the story took at the end. It's definitely weirder, like I said, than a traditional thriller, but if you're wanting to get into horror, I think this is something that you could definitely get into, especially if you enjoy the missing person trope and you want to figure out what happened to all of these missing little boys. This next one is a recent read and a recent 5-star for me, and that is Everyone Here is Lying by Sherry Lapina. This one really caught me off guard. I just kind of went in with like mid expectations. I feel like I always do that for a domestic thriller, but this one was so good. It's exactly what I want out of a domestic thriller, and we are following the disappearance of this 9-year-old girl. We get all these different perspectives from everyone in the neighborhood. It feels like we're going door to door to door and just getting the tea from these suburban people. It is so entertaining, so juicy, so salacious. There's so many secrets that we're uncovering. It is just entertaining from the word go. So fast paced. I read this book in like 2 sittings over the course of a couple hours on sprints, and it was so much fun. Just such an easy read. It had that good small suburban atmospheric kind of feel, and the twists in this book, oh my god. I wish I could tell you guys what other trope is featured in this book. It's one of my favorite tropes. I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's a spoiler, but oh my god, that twist. I just love the direction that the story took. It's a not quite so basic missing kid thriller. I've seen this trope done 1,000,001 times. Literally, when I was picking the books for this video, I was like, there are so many things I could talk about. So these really are the 12 best of the best, and this one is up there. I know it's a new release and maybe you haven't heard a lot of things about it, but I say take a chance on it. I really enjoyed it. Next up, we have The Housewarming by S.E. Lines. This one is so underrated, but everyone that I've recommended it to, for the most part, has loved it just as much as I do. We are following a mom who is rushing out the door. She is putting her little baby in the carriage, about to take her on a little walk around the neighborhood, and she realizes she forgets her jacket. It's cold outside. She runs upstairs for 30 seconds while the baby's sitting in the little carriage in the hallway, and when she comes back down with her jacket on, the baby is missing. Every parent's literal worst nightmare. And so she starts panicking. Basically, they cannot find the baby. The baby is missing, and it's still missing a year later. After she is like depressed, grieving for over a year, her husband is like, come on, you've got to try to like reintegrate into the world. And their neighbors are having this housewarming party, and he really encourages her to go. She ends up going, but she goes in with ulterior motives of kind of low-key interviewing all of her neighbors at this housewarming party and seeing if anyone might have noticed something a year ago that they've been sitting on all this time. And we begin to uncover what happened to her baby girl. It is so twisty, again, so juicy. It has that like rich people drama, suburban feel, whereas Everyone is Lying is kind of like typical suburbia. This one is definitely more rich people drama. Like the descriptions of the houses are so lavish, especially the house where the housewarming party is. It is just so entertaining, and the twists were unpredictable to me. I love S.E. Line's writing style. It just worked. Next up, let's talk about a YA thriller, and I believe the only YA book on this list, and that is Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. I absolutely loved this book. It is one of my favorites of Tiffany D. Jackson's. So we are following our main character, who is actually Monday, the character in the title's best friend, and she notices Monday, her bestie, stops coming to school, and she's trying to tell all the adults in her life, there's something going on with Monday. She's not coming to school. Where is she? What's going on? And all the adults, the teachers, the parents, the administration, the social workers that get involved, nobody seems to quite care enough to really look in and find out what happened to this little girl. So it is down to her best friend to do some investigating and find out what happens to her. And we are along the investigation with her. It's so interesting to follow a missing persons case from a child perspective, kind of similar to The Devil Crept In. I think it just adds like this heightened element to the story where you're viewing it from this innocent child's point of view. It is heartbreaking, but it also really increases like the stakes. And this book goes dark. I honestly cannot believe this is YA because the last 10% is super, super dark, which Tiffany D. Jackson is no stranger to taking it to that dark place, and I really appreciate her for that. It has a lot of depth and a lot of nuance to it. It is kind of one note through the middle, but I can totally forgive that because it kind of like gets you saying like, come on, when is something gonna happen? You are feeling the frustration that our main character is feeling, not knowing where her best friend is, feeling stuck, feeling hopeless, and then boom, you find out what happens, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. Next up, I have to talk about one of my favorite authors and who I consider like the queen of the missing person trope, and that is Lisa Jewell. We're gonna start out with Invisible Girl, but I actually have 2 recommendations from her that made it to the top 12. Invisible Girl, we are following, no surprise here, the disappearance of a girl from 3 perspectives, and these are all kind of like the suspects, I guess, and we're trying to figure out how the 3 of them are connected and what happened to this little girl. So one of them is like the creepy incel neighbor across the street, and yes, he is literally an incel. He's on incel forums in the book. It is so creepy to read about him. We're also following the mother of the girl, who they seem to have kind of a fraught relationship. The mother is a therapist and has really high expectations for her daughter. And then we're also following a runaway who this young girl may or may not be connected to in some way. As you go, you're like putting all of the pieces together. It is so exciting, and I didn't predict any part of it. It was such an easy 5-star because on top of the masterful plotting, my favorite thing about Lisa Jewell is the way that she writes character dynamics. They are so complex and just fucked up. These character dynamics are insane. It's what stands out about every single one of Lisa Jewell's books. The characters feel 3-dimensional, they feel real, they feel flawed and imperfect, and some people don't like that about her books. Some people think that her characters are problematic because they are intense and fucked up, but like, I love the nuance that she puts in there. I don't think every character needs to be a perfect like star student or a perfect stereotype or anything like that. So this one is one of my favorites. And why not just go ahead and dive into the other Lisa Jewell pick that is on this list, and that is The Night She Disappeared. In this book, we're following a teen mom, and she goes missing in the night. She lives with her grandma, and so we are following the grandma who is now left with her great-granddaughter, her granddaughter who's a teen mom's little baby, and she's like, I'm literally an old lady, like I've taken care of way too many kids, do not leave me to take care of this baby, where the hell has this girl gone? And she is not like stereotypical. I feel like being a teen mom has a negative connotation, but she is not that at all. She totally breaks that stereotype. She is just the most dedicated, wonderful, responsible mom. So it's super out of character for her to just like go missing like this. But the police think she's a runaway. The grandma is like begging them, my granddaughter is not like this. She really cares about her baby. She would never just leave. And it feels like a fight to get the investigators to find out what happened to her. We are finding out what happened to her by following an alternate perspective of this couple who just moved into this like Airbnb bed and breakfast kind of place that I think, if I remember correctly, used to be like a boarding school. So we are trying to figure out what that place possibly has hidden in its walls that can lead to us discovering what happened to our main character. Again, same kind of comments that I made about Invisible Girl. The character dynamics are so interesting and dynamic. It keeps you gripped from the first page. On top of the unpredictable plot, you have really, really well-crafted characters. Highly recommend both of these. And honestly, most of Lisa Jewell's thrillers have some kind of missing person element to them, so I recommend all of them. I really love all of her books. Next up, I want to talk about The Night Swim by Megan Golden. And this isn't your typical missing person thriller. It's more like a cold case, what happened to her kind of play on a missing person. So we don't actually see the snatchery, but we know that this podcast host is drawn to covering true crime content because of what happened to her sister years and years and years ago. We don't really know what happened to her. 20 years ago, her sister just boop, left the face of the earth and it's gone unsolved. So Rachel, our main character and podcast host, is now working on this new case that she's covering on her podcast, and she starts to realize that it may have a connection with her sister's case. She starts getting anonymous letters telling her that her sister has been murdered, and we are trying to figure out what is happening with the case in the present day and what happened to her sister all those years ago and what's going to happen to her now as she's getting these threatening letters. It's a lot of layers to this plot. It keeps it really, really exciting. Again, the character dynamics are great. This book has really nuanced commentary on rape culture, which is great, but also be aware of trigger warnings going into it. The case that she's covering in the like present day chapters on her podcast is not a murder case. It is one of sexual assault, and it can be really, really, really triggering because it goes really in depth to what it's like to be a survivor. I really appreciated the representation, but do be aware of that before you go into it. The next book is again more of a recent read for me, and that is You Can Trust Me by Wendy Hurd. In this book, it is like super summery California rich people drama vibes. We are following two scrappy little scammer girls as they travel up the coast of California scamming rich men, and that is how they live their lives. That is their job. They clock in every morning and just scam rich men into giving them this like beautiful, luxurious life of their dreams. But things go wrong when they get involved with someone who is a little bit dangerous, and they get separated and one of them goes missing. So we are following the missing girl and everything that's happening to her and all of the shit that she is uncovering and like dark secrets, dark underbelly of this rich man's world. And then we're also following the other girl who's looking for her friend and not knowing where she is. The dual timeline is so good. We are following both of them in the past as well as the present. So it's like 4 different perspectives, 2 girls at 2 different places in time. It is so, so, so interesting to uncover the dynamics of their relationship too. It's a really interesting relationship. Low-key sapphic vibes in here that I absolutely loved. It has eat the rich energy, it has good for her energy, and that ending absolutely popped off. It was such a fast-paced and thrilling read and super shocking. I read this one for a 24-hour readathon. It was the last book that I read, so I was really tired, and getting through it, it just invigorated me. It was such an easy read. Next up, we have the heaviest book in the world. I swear this literally weighs 20 pounds. And it's also a little bit more horror. Definitely like slower moving, more thriller horror combo, but more horror than the other books on this list. And that is of course Night Film by Marisha Pessl. This is one of my longtime favorite books. Like if you have been around since the beginning of my channel, you probably remember the days where I recommended this in like every other recommendation video. We are following the disappearance of an iconic horror movie director's daughter. So this horror movie director guy has this cult following, and when his daughter goes missing, this journalist is like, there's a story here. So he joins up with this like motley crew, unlikely trio of people who are drawn to the case, and we start figuring out what's going on. Again, like eat the rich vibes. We dive into the dark underbelly of like what it's like to produce horror movies and how the real life horror came from that. really great commentary, such a trippy ride. Like, this is like high octane mystery thriller for the first half, and then the back half is like weird trippy horror. It also has really good like media elements in here. There are pictures and inserts like that throughout the book, little different, like this is when it really is getting weird. So there's just like a random black page in the middle to like represent the void or something. I don't know. I love this book. I could literally talk about it for ages. The characters are interesting. The plot is insane. The plot is genius. The commentary is genius. Actually, with everything I've been through with the horror community, I low-key want to read this again. I want to give this a reread so I can just like revel in the commentary of it all. It's a masterpiece. If you haven't read this yet, I feel like we don't talk about her as much anymore, but this is essential reading for the channel. Next up, we have kind of a controversial pick, okay? And that is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. For me, this is phenomenal. Hit it out of the park. I think Riley Sager can do no wrong. I absolutely love him. Every single book he's written is a banger to me. And this one is one of my favorites. It's a weird one, okay? It goes off the deep end. It's weird, okay? If you want things rooted in reality that are not gonna go a little camp, do not read this book. But if you're open to something a little bit different and you like that missing person trope with an unreliable narrator, you're gonna love this one. We are following this actress who has gotten herself into a lot of trouble with the press, just kind of like embarrassing herself, being on substances in public, and having huge, massive emotional displays of grief because she recently lost her husband. Of course, that is not a problem for any regular person, but because she's in the public eye, her mom is like, you've got to get out of here. You've got to quarantine yourself. You can't be making a fool of our family. So she goes to her little rich person cabin in the woods to like recover. And as she's there, she's super paranoid. She's drinking all day. It's giving like very campy version of a stereotypical unreliable narrator in a thriller, and she's just sitting on her porch drinking her whiskey, like watching. She literally has binoculars and she's watching the neighbors across the street because it's this exclusive community of like celebrity cabins, and she knows the famous couple that is in the cabin across the lake, and they have this big glass house. It's not like shabby little cabin. It is a big glass house. So she can see right in there with her binoculars. And one day she notices that the wife is missing. She's nowhere to be found. So she starts to do her own investigating and things go off from there. I absolutely love the direction that it went. You're either gonna love it or hate it, and I fell in the love it side because I just think it's so camp, so fun. It does something totally different than any other thriller that we've seen in recent years. I absolutely love it. I adore it. It is, just don't take it seriously, okay? Just don't take it that seriously. It's a thriller. It's fun. Have fun with it. Next up, we have A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. I did predict the twist in this book. I do want to set that disclaimer. About 10 pages in, I predicted the twist. I don't know how I did it. It was kind of like a weird fluke moment because I never do that, but I did in fact predict it very early on. And I know you're probably wondering, well then why are you recommending this book if it's so predictable? First of all, not everyone did. We read this for my book club and not everyone did predict the twist. But even though I did, I still had an amazing time with it. It didn't affect my reading experience at all. And I think if there's more than just that like trying to figure out the plot, trying to figure out who done it, driving the thriller, that is so valuable. And if you don't predict it, it's gonna make it even more exciting. In this book, we are following our main character. She is a therapist and she is just trying to rebuild her life after her dad, her own father, confessed to being a serial killer. Yeah. She's just trying to get her own self together through her own healing. She's finding fulfillment in helping other young troubled girls. But things start to go wrong when one of her patients goes missing and another string of missing girls starts popping up, just like it did with her dad's crimes. So she's thinking, is there a copycat killer? Is somehow her dad back kidnapping her patients? There is a lot of moving parts, but I loved our main character. She's one of those lead women in a thriller that I absolutely love because she's imperfect, she's nuanced, she is not that perfect, wonderful ingenue character. She is so much more than that. And like I said, even though I predicted the twist, I had a really good time. There were still some parts of the story that caught me off guard. Highly recommend it for just an easy to read, exciting thriller. And my last pick to round out the dozen missing person thriller picks is Local Woman Missing, of course, by Mary Kubica. We're following multiple disappearances in this book. Two separate women in the same neighborhood go missing. And then like a woman and her daughter, I believe, go missing. And then years later, the daughter comes back. And everyone in the town, in this community that's been like racked over these disappearances is like asking this girl, what the hell happened to you? Where's your mom? What happened to these missing ladies? Like, who is the perpetrator? And this girl's just like, y'all, listen, I've been through trauma. It's not really gonna all come out like that. So we are trying to figure out what happened to the girl then, what happened to the women now, where are they all, are they dead, who did this? And this plot is a little convoluted, I'm not gonna lie, but I have looked at it from every angle and I don't see a plot hole. If you see a plot hole, come at me, tell me, let me know in the comments down below. Of course, give a preface that there's spoilers, but I think this is a really airtight plot and it just has so many different things woven all together. If you're a plot-driven girl, you're gonna love this. It is super exciting. There's not too many like deep character analysis type of things. It is just straight up juicy neighborhood drama with intricate plotting that I think holds up. And that twist, that final twist, oh my God, blew my mind. I loved it. So that is gonna be it for my top 12 missing person trope recommendations. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and got a couple good recs. If you did like it, go ahead and give me a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to check out Dossier down below. And don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. I will see you guys in my next one.